Thank you for the introduction. So anyone, since we're talking about Veterans Day, do I have other veterans here in the audience? Anybody else served? All right, that's quite all right. Because the SERE training, all I'll just say is you've seen the movies, and when you talk about SERE training, it's like that down pilot behind enemy lines, just kind of common. That's where that training came from. And that's what that was my specialty in the military. And I'll just say that I started a company because nobody's going to hire you to do such very niche things, so you have to create your own company. I did that in '05. And I started a school. It's the largest contract-supported SERE school for DOD. It's at the Army's aviation, so all the helicopter pilots now get this training. And if you can believe it, when I came in '84, I got my commission. To my retirement in 2004, no school like that existed. Where I went to SERE school was with Special Operations Special Forces at Fort Bragg. We didn't get it established because I wrote the master plan until 2006. If you kind of go, well, that's long after 9/11. So just kind of put it in context to go, that should be painfully obvious that we should have that, but it just took that kind of time. So let me just fast forward here to the fact that what do civilians get? In the end, what we do is not a military thing. It's a human thing. And I think most people could say the risks that are out there now, without blowing it up any more than it needs to be, but the risks out there to people traveling abroad and here at home, well, they've changed. And I don't think most people would say they're going to get better real soon. We'd all like to hope they're going to get better. So we just need to be our own best stewards, and in some cases, our own 911. So that's kind of what the gist is of what I'm going to try and focus on while we go through this. So what I'm going to set the bar to say, what are we talking about? Hazards versus threats. Hazards are things that are inherent to an area. They don't discriminate. If you're a local or you're from out of town, you're young, you're old, you're this group, that group, you have money, you are poor, those things happen. Mother Nature events, tornadoes, and all kinds of things that you can pretty much say they don't discriminate. In the middle, I call the transitional ones. You're somehow involved. Generally, your judgment, maybe your knowledge or lack thereof, something that you did. We're not saying that you're totally to blame, but you had a hand in things that occurred next. And the last one is targeted. Yes, you might find yourself over there from this realm, but it's not your fault. If you were to be kidnapped, that's not your fault. If you're to be robbed. So I'm not here to say that something that happens to you is something that that's just wrong in a civil society, so don't think. But we'd like to reduce some of this stuff in the middle. What do those look like? Well, sort of like this. Health, just knowing things that it's going to get you knocked down from traveler's diarrhea to something much worse. Just those things that you do ahead of time. And these are pretty major. You come back here, it affects your health and well-being, to all the way to transportation accidents. Probably number one for getting most people hurt going to a hospital. And when you go to a hospital or some sort of trauma center overseas, it could be equivalent to what we have in the US, level 1. It could be your worst nightmare as far as what it looks like. And those of you who've just done other travel, seen that, any other Peace Corps volunteers, in other words, who've worked in more austere regions, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You could get sicker just by going to a healthcare facility like that. All right, civil unrest. A lot of that's going on right now. So you're just in there and everything's fine, and you don't realize it's something's been bubbling up, and it erupts right there where you are. And usually the 5-star hotels are right there in those centers of cities and things like that. A lot of that happens there, not out in the outskirts. All right, the transitional ones. Number one, even in the US, getting lost. Now, that seems very common when you're overseas. You don't know where you are. If you have a driver, a facilitator, fix-it person, then that's kind of solved for you. But what happens when you don't? They can get misoriented themselves. This is about 3/4 of the people who spend an unexpected overnight just out here doing outdoor backcountry stuff, Colorado or anywhere in the US. 3/4 of them are because they got lost first, not because they had an injury or a flat tire or so self-induced. So we spend a little time talking about kind of knowing where you are and mental mapping and things like that, and pay big dividends going where you want to go and avoiding where you don't want to be. And last but not least, as you might expect, targeted threats. Everything from pickpocketing, petty theft, all the way up to the worst kind of scenarios of kidnapping, assassination, or some sort of targeting event, whether it's just you indiscriminately as a group, sort of active shooter type stuff, or truly targeting you because of where you're from, what you look like, possibly your net worth, or known because they've done their research, maybe where you are, what you surround yourself with, okay? So with that theme, what gets us targeted? Pretty obvious. I go back and say it's three things. It really depends on what they want. The obvious thing and what you mostly hear is the don't dress flashy and things like that, which is kind of what's seen here. But that's for, again, the petty thief, all right? If I'm a human trafficker and I'm looking for young boys, I'm not looking at her. If I'm looking because I'm targeting some high net worth person, or maybe he's a government person, maybe I think he works for Intel community or something like that. So it goes back to who's out there, what do they want, and how far will they go to get it? That's pretty much it. So for you, what will make you targeted, and hopefully they're not going to shoot this poor woman, but but obviously for, again, the petty theft type person, that somebody like this, lots of jewelry, okay, elderly woman, I'm just saying that they're going to make sure a younger male who is going to be targeting, usually, and they'll usually group up, they're going to make sure, they want to make absolute sure they're going to succeed. So they're going to have multiple people, or if they are singular, they're going to have some sort of weapon because they want compliance like that. All right? On the other side, worst side from petty theft to terror, that's basically all the terror attacks. Probably no surprise there if I said that's a heat map of what shows you all the terrorist attacks from 1970 up through about 2015. If I showed, this is from the Global Terrorism Database done through the University of Maryland. If we were to flash forward just to 2 more years, 2017 alone, doesn't look much different. Some of those areas you might expect, Iraq, Afghanistan, things like that. But I'll tell you what, when you start looking into places into Europe, you have a lot more attacks and things, and you'll start seeing some names. It's not the Baghdad, Damascus, it's London and Paris and Brussels, all right? Or even here, you got a red dot here, Las Vegas, okay? So you hear this term a lot. I mean, you've heard the term situational awareness. It's like this buzzword now for being safe and secure or trying to figure out how to be switched on. I mean, it's what Jason Bourne is, right? When you guys walked in here, you could immediately tell me how many recessed can lights are in the ceiling here and memorized all the license plates of the cars out there, right? Well, unless these things are dropping out on our heads, there's really no reason to pay attention to them. So it's not about filling our head with a bunch of stuff that makes no difference. It's about focusing on the things that do make a difference. So with that, it's just very simple. There's 2 aspects. What we take in and matching that with what we already know. We have patterns we perceive. We have stored patterns, things we've learned. Hopefully we've learned it correctly. Because if you learned incorrectly, you're going to match up stuff and come to conclusions that aren't exactly correct. That's how prejudice is formed, prejudging or incorrectly judging. We match these 2 to come up with what is both our awareness, our perception, and understand that perception. There's about 7 billion of those on this planet right now, okay? There's only one Earth, but I guarantee you there's 7 billion worlds. Just ask the different people and how they see it. So this is very much a personal thing with every person out there. But this is what is our consciousness. On our 5 things, you see us on both things, I have a little question mark. Anybody want to guess what that is? We have 5 senses, right? What's the question mark up there for? Is there a 6th? Call it what you will. Intuition, 6th sense, guardian angel, gut feel from our primordial upbringing that's just there. All I can say in this realm, whether security in a foreign or foreign land or just a city you don't know, or in the evenings when you're not so, if you get that hair on the back of your neck, sort of just uneasy feeling, all I can say is always go with that. You're not, you just, that's one of those things that I'll never tell anyone, because that's more of it's a gut thing than a more of a frontal lobe thinking, prejudging thing. So if I can tell you that, always go with that. You probably do anyway. All right, so this is our essay. So here's how we break it down. There's 4 big areas. All right. People out there, all right, who are they, what do they want, how far will they go to get it? Everybody else out there, and I'm saying they're all adversarial. These people could help me. It's not, all these aren't negative. These are just potential. Number 2, you, my conditions as the individual. The temporal or time conditions, all right, how long is this going? And last, not the environment. So, I'm from the military. We have to give everything acronyms, right? So we did. So we want foresight, right? So we took foresight, spelled correctly, to the number 4 in SITE, foresight. Whoops, sorry about that. Back up. That this is really what we're boiling it down to. Now, when we go into classes, we go into all these and what that means, how you can, but it gives a framework. What do I need to know? Because in the end, you're right here in the middle of all these things. Everything you're doing, if you're on the X, you're right there. And when you find yourself on the X, we talk about like a target, something's going down right then, well, it's kind of late. You're not going to sit here and do an analysis. You're reacting now. This is a tool with which to go and use it as a planning tool ahead of time. All right, but I just want to give you just some context of how this essay, and what is the goal of essay? Is it to be ultimately aware? No. The goal of your essay, and the understanding is to be ahead of the game, is to maintain situational superiority. Because I guarantee your adversary out there is picking the time and the place, and he's on his home turf. Or her home turf, I guess will be equal opportunity there of bad people. So in the end, to take that situational superiority, we're taking this awareness and understanding of what's about to happen, what is happening or what's about to happen, and make the right decision quickly so that I can maintain freedom of movement and have options available to me. So I don't get hemmed up, either for my options are decreasing or hemmed up like I got captured, involved in something worse, okay? Is there a trick or shortcut to this? Is there a way to hack, if I use the coin term of everything, we always look for the shortcut. Is there a way to do this for something as broad as situational awareness? I'll put this to you, because a lot of this is, there's no hard science, a lot of art. When you make a big decision, especially, and I'll use something that has to be like an item. So a car maybe that you're thinking, so, it's a big decision. I mean, at least you're thinking about it, the options, the colors of whatever, there's new models you've been looking at it, studying. Could be a new, but something that you see out there. Once you make the commitment, that's the one I want, before you're right there in the dealership, what happens almost if it takes you a while, don't you start seeing them pop up everywhere? It's not like you're actively looking. You're not that hyper vigilant, because then doing that you miss. No, you're just going about your day. Oh, there goes one. Oh, that one just passed me. It's just right there. So all I'm saying is making the commitment ahead of time, just the intent of your intention that I want to look for these things, or things that in this case are going to potentially be negative to me. I will just tell you, for me, the stuff almost comes in a way it just naturally avails itself in some cases. Let others, it's like, woof. Now granted, that's a lot of education. Right now, tourists come here to Colorado, and we know what happens in the summertime every afternoon, right? What happens in the high, exactly, and especially in the high country. If you are, woe be it unto you if you're above tree line, right? When that happens. We know that. We don't even have to see the clouds. We just have to know that's what other locals have. So it's good to tap into their knowledge. But you can also learn that. You can find that information out there. So be wary of that, because again, some of those dangers to SA is not having that baseline knowledge of what can get you. So here's what we're talking about, that unprepared. You just have no baseline. You can't tell what's abnormal because you don't know what normal is. Fatigued, because after that 14-hour flight to Australia, you jump off that airplane as chipper as everything. So, I mean, these things work against you just naturally. Overwhelmed, for those of you who are still working, because I've got a huge proposal due Friday, And I'm not thinking about it right now, but until just then. But anyway, we get so many things, right? We're already multitasking. Distracted, no focus. This is a big thing, and it's used in social norms. Pickpockets love to do this, and it's what magicians use, right? The art of distraction to do something else here. It's a big one. Just don't care. Those people who just flat don't, everything, the world's, is their stage, and, it's all out there for them. This last one, expectations. There's a normalcy bias that we have, and you have expectations you displace from where you're at home. And if you don't actively flip the switch, when you get abroad, you're going to have you may have that surprise. Where does this happen? Here's a good example. At the baseball field there, on the back side of your batter. Now, if you're over there on a batter, whether you're left or right-handed, and you're in that thing, those bats go into the stands more often than they don't. And they just happen, If you're sitting there and you're surprised, because I'm telling you, when you are truly surprised, if something really loud or something went off right now, everybody's going to do the same thing, me included. If it truly catches by surprise, all right, you're going to turtle up. Okay, it's just like a knee. You're going to turtle up, and if you see a threat, you're going to immediately put your hands up towards it. Actually, there's a lot of shootings with police and stuff where, like a drug bust gone bad or whatever, and they'll find people, they're shot through the hands because the gun came up. They're like, go, and they put it up there, and they're like almost perfectly in line with where the muzzle is, right through the hands and them. It's just a natural reaction until they can come out of that. And you can see a lot of that. It's just into some, except for the guy with the red stripe. He's doing a good job because he snatched it. He was obviously had SA, or maybe the beer. Maybe the beer helped him a little bit with that. But everybody else is freaking out. You don't want to be this person in any of the things that happen as far as it relates to travel. So, all right, where does all this come from? If you wanted to study it later on, it's not important to know these things about Cooper and his essay things. He gave it color levels. All I would say is you don't want to be this, head buried in the phone like all the people online and they walk into the pools and stuff, right? Those people. You don't want to be that, all right? Yellow is kind of that. I'm just alert. I know what's going on, but I'm not hyper-vigilant. Unless somebody yells my name and saying, you owe me money, and starts running at me, okay, now I see a threat, now I'm, and I'm getting ready. Maybe I have to fight this person. Maybe they mistook me for somebody else. All right, all the way up. But here's what I wanted to point out. What they said is 90% of your security comes from SA. And it's true that your security posture and you just staying out of trouble has more to do with your situational awareness and being aware and avoid than it is the 10%, and this is a guy who's both a gunfighter from the military and later trained a lot of police. It's that. So those of you who might have concealed carry and all that, I'll tell you, it's great, okay? But it's that 90% as much as it is you being on the range and being proficient at the tool there. I will tell you this too, for those of you who do that, you have any tool at all, if you have a strength like that, maybe say you're multiple black belt, martial arts or whatever, I'll just tell you this, any strength overused is a weakness, all right? So it's very common for people who carry to go for that. They practice on the range, that's all they do. Here comes a threat, he's 20 plus feet away, screaming at me, pulls a knife, starts running, I clear, I'm starting to go, and guess what, is on me. We have a 22 and 2 sort of thing. Anybody heard that before? Anybody? 22 and 2, it's gotten a lot of people killed because they were trying to clear somebody can cover 22 feet in 2 seconds, and it's more than you can clear, especially if you're not a cop with outside. You're concealed carry, you can't clear, get your weapon out, put it in operation generally. Even when you know about it, they're already on you. And that knife to a gunfight, yeah, in those situations, the knife wins. So you think about if you get locked into a mode of training, and rather than taking what the threat is at the time, there's other ways to deal with that kind of threat. So I just throw that out there as a little aside, because I know a lot of people do carry. Bad thing about carrying here, it's great, we have the Second Amendment, it doesn't work overseas, unless you're government. I mean, Secret Service can, and in some places they have to be unarmed. This is some of that proximity and reaction times. I'll go through this real quick. I'll just say that here it is, out here at the public space, it's natural for me to talk at 25 feet or so, because I'm presenting, okay? It's not normal. So Carl, so what'd you do today? Doing this is not normal. So if people are doing that, engaging you in certain things, if it seems abnormal, it probably is. Obviously, we also have the personal space, and we know, abroad, they like to violate that. In America, we don't like close talkers, all right? There's a magic spot. But other places, if you get outside of that, and I'm saying inside 4 feet. What's 4 feet? Are we sitting out here with tape measures? No. 4 feet is very simple. Hey, sir, my name's Bart. How you doing? It's right there. It's this. Because that 4 feet at the level that you would go just to shake somebody's hand is also that if we were about to fight, is about where we would be. Because he knows that I can't really strike him from here without moving in. He has, it's a weird thing, but we know what that boundary is inherently. All right? When people get inside that, are you going to let them in? Excuse me, ma'am, do you have the time? And they're coming in on you with a social precept, and you let them in. Sometimes it's fine. Other times, not so much. Here's another thing, though. If I'm right up close to you, either front or back, it's unnerving. What if we're in an elevator and we're like this? Is this normal? If we're in an elevator, yeah. Side by side, it's not a big deal. And they like to use that, too. In public transportation or elevators or things like that. Get up beside you, and that's fine. And now I'm working stuff as far as pickpocketing and things. So you just got to be aware. Understanding the age of the internet, where can you be targeted from? Not only visual, from around the world. They can be looking you up, social media, whatever else. If you're wide open, we do some stuff that scares the heck out of people, and we're not hackers extraordinaire, just open source. And if you're out there, we can find you, or your kids, or whatever, to get to you, that kind of thing. And I'm saying if we can do it just to show you where your vulnerabilities are, so can the real bad people, okay? So just, the biggest thing is we want to, again, create space. So if you need to assert yourself, no, thank you. Can't help you. Excuse me, sir, do you have the time? Or could you show me where? You're not from there. I can't. I'm not saying be the ugly American, but you need to assert yourself sometimes to keep distance, all right? All right. So let's talk about the way we travel. Here it is, the 4 biggies. And we're going to stop and break for the food. Let's do it. Okay. Let's do it here. Sure. Break for food. All right, for the sake of time, I will drive on with, please enjoy yourself. I'm used to a military crowd, so I can project to the back of the room. So don't worry about paper rattling or whatever. I'm good. You're not going to distract me. All right, we were talking about when we travel, no matter what you do, whether it's for business or for recreation or whatever else, it generally follows this model. So just as a general sense, because we want to talk about these points and where we need to be sort of aware, more aware or not. All right, and maybe dispel some myths too. So we come into a point of entry. Usually it's an airport. You might come by ship or some other way into a country, but you come into some port of entry. After that, we have the accommodations we stay at, where we are at night. We have an activity or workplace. So if we're there for work, it's a workplace, so it could be a daily activity. These could be combined sometimes if you're at an all-inclusive resort, or it could be just, again, someplace you're going from your accommodation. So it's where you are mostly during the day. With that, restaurants, recreation, retail, all other, okay? Which is, that might be your activity, just going shopping. But the bottom line is these are places you'll see, and what we'll talk about is these touch points, these 4 touch points, and what makes them different. All right? We have one trip usually from our entry to our accommodations, and when we first do our trip, drop off our luggage. We have transit in between, of course, by some method, by foot, by vehicles, Uber, whatever. However many days we're in that place, maybe we're going out and about, or to either way, so once per day. But how many times are we going to the other things? For shopping, for eating, could be up to 3 times a day or more. So you start seeing. Now what's different about these places is, are they public or not? And then we have one trip back out when we leave, all right? This is what's different. The difference between habitual areas and anchor points, these are terms that are found in the book Left of Bang. Left of Bang has to do with situational awareness. In other words, bang, it's too late. Now that's a military book. It's kind of a military written by, but it's good. So I'm just using context for what we're doing here. But in the book, it talks about habitual areas, which are things that you just go to that are open. Like I'm going to go eat and things like that, but it's open to everyone. Anchor points are where I could find you. If you're an embassy worker, I know I can stand outside the embassy and you're going to come in there about 8 and you're probably going to leave around 5 or whatever. In other words, and I also know that anybody that goes into those places that are secured, a bank, a secured office building, anything like that, you have credentials to get in there. You've now been elevated into if I'm targeting for people because I want to get into that place or whatever else, or I want to know more about you, I want to elicit information. So understand that abroad, accommodations are much more secure than they are in the US sometimes, right? You can't even get into the lobby sometimes without going through airport security. In other places, you can, certainly even in the US, you can expect that within the accommodations, your room is certainly secure, even if the rest of it's open. Same for activities in workplaces. But this, by its very nature, has to be open. And for the airport, half of it's open. You have a public side, and then you have the other side past security, right? Make sense? Okay. So here's where you potentially could be targeted. Obviously, when you're out there in transit. Any of these, as far as when you're thinking about when you've traveled. And let me just say this while we're going. Anybody here, since they've been traveling for work, for pleasure, had an event themselves? You either go to a place that you thought was dangerous, or you actually had an event. Show up your hands a little higher. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 5. Okay, so you actually had an event. How many have traveled, didn't have an event, but you traveled to places that maybe the State Department said, but even if the State Department didn't say it, did you feel somewhat, yeah, okay, more, about half, okay? Listen, don't wait for the State Department to tell you it's dangerous, State Department could not say a thing, and you see fires and explosions going off. And usually right after that's when that's when the warning comes out. It's always timely like that, okay? All right, and I'll just say this, last thing. Anybody been held against their will abroad or while traveling? Any ex-cons here? Come on, show your hands. Anybody? All right. Just checking. It may not have been your fault. The reason I asked that, let me ask you this. When you go through security or customs, and you've got weird stuff, you've been pulled aside because of something in your bag, something like that, okay? Could be here, could be abroad. Are you free to go at that point? You say, I don't want to play. You just walk off? No, it doesn't. You are being held against your will. I just tell you that not to make it bigger than it is, but know this, when you're abroad, that's a slow boil. It can be. Depending on what you do or what you say, you could go into secondary, which is more like a room back over here instead of out here, and it starts getting worse. Okay? So it's not always, they got you hemmed up and you're throwing you in the clink and all that, and you hear the big door slam. It could be that slow boil thing. So just be very attuned when you're going through those things, especially when you're going to a country that may be, say their law enforcement or government infrastructure isn't just the most ethical, okay? All right, if they're wanting to exploit you some way. All right, back on track here. Here's our 4 spots. So we're going to talk about each of these because there have been events at every one of these, from airports to hotels to workplaces. All right, all of them have had events. And we're going to talk about these. So we'll start with airports, okay? Of all those, where are you most worried about? Now, of all these 4, where do you most worry? 4, actually 5, and we're in transit, but the terminals, like here, all right, and like when you arrive, or you because that's how it is in Taken, right? Pick them up right there, and they're coming off the airplane. That's myth number 1. Statistically, that's not where you're going to get, and I'm saying just looking at airports, all right? That's not where you're going to get hit. What happens, though, is because it's culture shock, especially when it's something new, it's what impacts us the most. But once we're there for a while, we kind of get desensitized. But that first, the sights, the sounds, the smells, the whatever it is, it's just a real shock to what our normalcy is here. And we get accosted with a lot, from timeshares to whatever else they're trying to hawk. They're just in your face and pretty aggressive sales. So that's where it's uncomfortable. It's not really the most dangerous. Attacks do happen at airports. However, this probably looks familiar to all y'all. Because that's departures in good old Denver International. It is departures statistically where it happens. Why? That's a target-rich environment. You've got a lot of people on the public side queued up and waiting in lines that sometimes go all the way outside the terminal, right? If you were somebody wanting to do bad things, that's where you hit. Not saying things haven't happened on the arrival side, But arrivals come in and they stream in over time. You don't get this one big group. They just slip because they're coming through customs and everything. It's harder. Yeah, individually people get picked up, but this is where all I would say, especially when you're abroad coming back, get through the public side as quickly as possible, get on the back side, all right? And don't be the proud Brits. Oh, I'm sorry, I had them before. I had a couple pictures of a couple British people in Mombasa, Kenya, with these 2 Union Jacks on their luggage, So much for being low vis. You could do the same thing with, the American flag. You might be asking for it though if Americans are being targeted. Maybe that's, just watch yourself on departures, especially coming back. You've had a great trip, or maybe you had a very tired trip. You're depleted. Get through departures and on that other side, all right? Taxis, transit. Here's, I'll just tell you on that. There is certainly some issues with that. A lot of people get hurt in just automobile accidents because these taxis aren't in the best shape. Also, there's an issue about being, how easy is it to fake being a taxi driver, have, paying it, especially depending on some places you go where that's the taxi. Is it? Maybe it wasn't a taxi 5 minutes ago. All right, you're just going to go with whoever drives up to you, or are you going to go with something that the concierge gives you, or at a taxi stand, or something that's a little more vetted? How about Uber and Lyft and those kind of things? Would you use those abroad? Yeah, in fact, they're actually, some people go, well, no, I think that they're actually more vetted. In places like South Africa, where carjacking and crime is just through the roof, they actually recommend highly to use Uber and Lyft over taxi services because, again, I can paint a vehicle, I can put a thing on top, I can make a little badge or whatever and hang out, and it's not hardly controlled near as much. So I'm not saying, we've read reports where Uber drivers have gone off the deep end and done something, attacked an individual, but that's a rare occurrence of just of crime or whatever. But with that, I would just say on the taxis, when you get in, I'll just tell you this. How many times you've gotten in a car and your friend's car, maybe it's at night, you're going to from maybe out to eat or it's dark and you're talking, you're in the moment with them. You get to wherever you're going and it's like time to get out, the dome light and come on, and you start reaching over for the door handle and you're like, where is it? Because it's not your car, you don't know where it is, and you're kind of fumbling around. It's no big deal, but what about, had for some reason you'd gotten in an accident and that car burst into flames, or it left the bridge and started getting submerged. Those few seconds of you clambering around looking for the door handle could mean life or death. Now, granted, that's a long stretch, but I just want to put that in your head to say, abroad, I want to know where the handle is, and I want to know that it works. Because you get in some of these taxis, there isn't even a handle. They're claptrap, right? Or maybe they remove the handle. Or I reach over there and there's the handle and I open it and nothing happens. We've had car lock, or child-proof, switches on cars since the latter 80s. So it's easy to do that. Now, does that mean I was getting ready to get, and this guy I thwarted a potential kidnapping attempt? Was that what was going on? I mean, is there a plausible reason why a taxi driver might have that stuff, besides it just being a claptrap car, that he actually had it so you couldn't? Because he opened the door for you, got your stuff in, closed the door for you, or whatever, but you reach over and it doesn't open. What would be a plausible reason for that? Right, somebody doesn't just jump fare, so it's just something they might do. But that becomes a problem for you, again, back to an accident or something else that you can't get out. Or if this is a bad person who really wants to drive here and I'm not following where we're going and now we're outside, because some of these airports, like Denver, are outside of town, right? You leave the airport and suddenly it's a whole lot of nothing till you get to it, all right? And that's where they make a turn. And now they're going to turn around and give you the added fare proposition or whatever else, or turn down here and 3 guys jump out, and you're like clamoring on door handles that don't work. Would you like to know that when you get in the vehicle? Wouldn't that be something you'd like to know then, to have that uh-oh moment where now those options have really shrunk down? Yes. So here's what I do. I close, and do I do it all the time? Not always, but I mean, it's a natural thing. This is about being prepared, not paranoid. Have you also closed the door on a car sometime and didn't all close all the way? You just kind of heard like it didn't feel like it totally closed. So what do? You just open it and give it a little more. That's it. So I reach over, open it. Oh, if they say, well, what's going on? Oh, I just thought it didn't close. You just pass it on, move on. The fact that I open it and close it, boom. Now I know at least I got one. You don't have to do both. I got one. And then you can lock it. because I want to be able to egress when I want to egress, and I don't want people opening the door from the outside while we're going, because there's always a snatch and grab too that can happen. So that's what you want. You want that in your hotels, you want that in a taxi. But that's just something that takes 2 seconds. If I found out that I can't get out of this thing, are we going anywhere? Nope. I'll crawl over this bench before we will. I don't think he's necessarily going to kidnap me, but I'm not going in this car. And I'd rather make a scene right there. I know where I'm at. I'm at the hotel, I'm at the airport, or whatever else, right? Than to be somewhere where you don't. All right? Just a tip. Taxis. Okay, hotels. I'm judging by this crowd, sort of the caliber of hotel that you probably are staying at. Champagne on ice, whatever. This is a 5-star resort. Heads of state stay here. Very famous place. Anybody recognize it? It's the Taj Mahal Hotel in Mumbai. It's the hotel in 2008 that was hit by several people, along with the Oberoi next door. It's a gorgeous place. I mean, the grounds and everything else, until these guys showed up and they turned this into this over 4 days. So understand that when an event goes down like this, it's not going to be, oh, the police show up, it's over real quick. 4 days. Held them off. And unfortunately, that the foreigners, and Americans included, and Europeans were targeted, and they could go through there and they found that they just weren't burned up, that they were found, and it was just bad stuff, if you want to read about that. A lot of people died. And so understand that these hotels, just because they're 5-star, just because the embassy tells you you should go there, because this is what happens. It's always the same. I can point out to all these cities in the last 10, 15 years that have had major attacks, and whether it's narco-terrorists, Islamo-fascists, whatever, that they're hit, it's always the high-end 4- and 5-star hotels, many of them the ones recommended by the embassy. Okay? So don't just think because the embassy recommended it that it's, oh, well, it's good to go. It has the gold seal of approval. No attacks while I'm here. It's just not the case. All right? Just standard hotel stuff. You should do it anyway. Check your door locks. You guys would know what, I mean, if you started seeing a lot of marks around with jimmying and things like that, or a lot of, broken, I mean, this is just pot metal where it's been redone several times or whatever. What that tells you is somebody's been coming in and out of there, kicking this door in more than once. And I'll tell you, this is not always in some seedy hotels. I found this in very upscale places. I'll show you some others. So just checking, again, just like we did the taxi, I'm checking, can other people just get in when they want, or can I lock this? I've got a device I can show you too that if you want to take with you traveling, that you could buttress this up if you're worried about, okay? How about the exits? I want to be able to get out too. Okay, when the big boom goes, or other yelling and screaming and rat-a-tat-tat or whatever else, or just fire alarm, I want to be able to get out. How many of you just walk the exits? It's not something you want to do. You want to relax. Again, 14-hour flight. I'm just, feet hurt. But I would take that time, especially before it gets to be nightfall. Because what you'll find a lot of times, they don't have OSHA and stuff abroad. You'll find emergency exits chained up and all this stuff, okay? It's bad. And so, anyway, find out what you can get out of. And in some cases, now, that's more of a training thing, and depending on your physicality or whatever, I would tell you sometimes lanais are great because it's another way to exit if I have the skills and tools to do it, that I don't have to go where everybody else is going. But then again, it also adds a level of ingress by people who will shimmy up the outside and lift those sliding glass doors off, and can breach those just as much, if not easier, than they can main doors inside. How about this? Your valuables. I'll tell you what this, trust but verify. Good Reagan thing. This was in Le Méridien. In fact, we were talking about Tahiti. This was in Tahiti. Open it up, bolted to the wall. Not so much. That just pulled it right out. And I literally, it just fell in my hand because I just checked like that. So they just taken the whole thing and walked out with it. Now it could have been just whatever. Again, not nefarious, but now I know, rather than finding out my stuff's gone. So, any questions on hotels?
Instead of like the in-room security, sometimes you go, they have, you can deposit your stuff in their security box.
Mm-hmm. Like a safety up near the lobby.
Or the concierge or something. Is
Sure.
that considered safe?
It's as...
But I mean, I always felt that, once you turn over your possessions, you have control of that possession.
True, and you would think that they, I would just say look at the fine print of what they are taking on. Just like I would say look at the fine print or what's induced when I say, because a lot of times we walk in here and say, okay, I can't have weapons in here, so I'm assuming you're taking charge of my security. Are they really? I mean, in some places they are, if they got armed people around, in other places not so much. So with that, I'll just tell you, all these people who hit those hotels, many times they came through the lobby. Because when guys with AKs come in, yeah, what do people, concierges and people in the lobby do? Get out fast or do this. It's all your, they're not going to die for your valuables in that thing. So one, I just say don't bring it. Or I would say it's probably better because you can't have regular staff going in. Because listen, they have all those factory codes. They know how to get into those things. It's very easy, those little small valuable safes. So I would say it's a better, but only slightly better. If somebody wants to get into those things in a bad sense, hotels can get robbed, certainly. Not so much by the front staff, a little more level of professionalism and that kind of thing and oversight. But in a real big thing, I would say they have been robbed, those kind of boxes, all right? So on the checkpoints, just another thing, if you're traveling or what, yes, sir?
What about, I heard this a long time ago, but is it more secure or safer if you're at the lower level versus upper? Not for a fire, but for terrorism or whatever.
Absolutely. Generally, they used to say anything less than 6 floors. That's very much a U.S. thing because they're talking about our ladder trucks can go up to 6 floors. You can go to other places where their fire access is bamboo stilts and ladders. So I don't worry about the 6th floor things. I wouldn't go above 3, but 3 for me is a magic kind of space. 2 or 3, 2 is easy lift up, but 3 takes a little more effort. And I can come down off 3 with, like with what I have and just stuff that's very simple. But if you had to, you could certainly jump off 2 or 3, but most of us are going to break ankles and legs and stuff. We're going to survive it if you land on your legs, but you're not gonna, it ain't gonna be pretty. But you're right, and the other thing with as far as, so that's on the location because you're not just easy access off the ground. The other one though is, don't be on the front facing or lobby side, like right over the lobby or right the front facing part of the hotel if you can help it. In other words, what faces the road? Because a lot of times those attacks on hotels start with a VBIED, basically a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device. They're big. So they run in there with a big truck that can basically erupt and blow a big hole and also knocks out a lot of the overt security, and then the guys run in behind with the AKs and start doing the rest of the work. Now, that's not always, but I will just tell you, a lot of attacks are just that, the vehicle-borne attack only. So if you're in that restaurant or in that front face, you'll see a lot of those get sort of impacted. That's what I would tell you if you can pick your room. Any others on hotels on that? And we can follow up on it. Yes, ma'am.
I've always thought when I'm overseas that it's better not to stay in high-end places where most Americans are, but to stay a level down somewhere not like right in that area. Is that true?
It is true. Okay. And I would just say it is true statistically, you would be better off. They are just hit a lot less. The only thing there would just be your connection with that area and just your knowledge, because the only thing then is you being just targeted more as an individual, not the place. That would be the only difference. But yes, as a place to stay, it would be better statistically. Okay, on the transit checkpoints, normally you don't have to deal with this. Most checkpoints and things like that are for your safety. I've been in places where, again, they're doing that not to shake down Americans or tourists and travelers, but in other places, that is the case. So I can't really tell you. You got to look and see, get a pulse of what's the place you're at. But with that, so in here you're saying, what's official? How can I tell? I see a guy in a uniform, stop sign, we're kind of out in the middle of nowhere. I see a guy in ski mask though. Maybe I should worry about them. It does get cold in the desert. This is in Tunisia. It's not long after, in 2013, I was there for a rally, motorcycle type, racing type rally. And they had a lot of infiltration going between Libya and Algeria. They had an attack there in early, end of 12, coming into 13, with the oil refinery that was down there, huge attack, killed about 30 foreigners, to include some Americans and stuff there, and certainly basically like ISIS, precursor of ISIS, or Al-Qaeda actually in the Maghreb, which is North Africa. So anyway, so they were cracking down. Listen, if you look like you're French, English, American, right on through. They were looking for locals. But good to know that. Now, if you came around the corner and saw that, okay, a little different. If you see the guy with the AK is taking a bedazzler to the front end, that probably tells you maybe unofficial. So, but here's Tunisia as well. Now remember the other guy in the Sam Brown belt, he had that certain look. Okay, well, what's this person? This is also Tunisia, but this is different. Is this kind of looks that? All I would say is, one, just daylight. Two, no real choke point here. You could drive off the road or whatever. Now, he's got an automatic rifle there, so you don't want to do that. But it just doesn't, it seems like, and what I would say is in and out of the towns at that time, this was normal. So again, that's why normalcy bias, or not normalcy bias, but what is a baseline for normalcy there, I've got it now. This is not a threat. This is for my protection. But in other cases, it can be a threat. Where are you going? Where people like a FARC outpost versus the Colombian military outpost, they look exactly the same because they wear the same uniforms. How do you know? Okay, so you really got to get the nuances. And in some places, like in Africa, that's as official as it gets. Okay, that's a real official, stop right there and just along the border. So you just got to really. That's where you have your local fixers can help you. And I want to honor the time frame there, Carl, because I just noticed we hit the halfway mark, or not the halfway mark, but the half hour mark at 12:30. So it must be semi-entertaining. Okay, good. I'll keep going. So, all right. How about recreational retail? All right. This looks like any generic mall in the U.S. Marble floors, a Gap, plenty of stores, 3, 4 floors, and escalators, and all kinds of stuff. This is actually in Kenya. This is the mall that got hit, all right, in Nairobi. Killed a whole bunch of people, all right. Again, this was the Somalis, Somalis coming over from, and I'm sorry, I'm just, you get all the names after a while and I hiccuping. Anyway, but they have a lot of Somali influence coming into it, doing a lot of attacks in Kenya. Kenya not being Muslim, but obviously the other surrounding areas are. And so they hit this mall. I won't show you any graphic pictures. So you could have that and think you're in, and then maybe people come to a place like this, like a local market, and feel, ooh, I'm a little more worried. Once again, to your point, you could be much more safe here than you are in the, right? So, but in both places, in different ways, just got to assess that and really know, because many of these local markets have been hit in some places, but it's usually between warring Shia Sunni or some sort of warring cultures or whatever, or certainly those, unfortunately, all those dividing lines between religions, and that's when we see that, whether it's, we saw it even in northern North Ireland, for years between just Catholics and Protestants. So it's not just, it's not just Islam, it's not just Buddhism or Hindu, whatever. So it's any of them. All right, and that's the Bataclan Theater in Paris. Go see a great show and Bad Juju later. We've had our own attacks here with the Pulse nightclub. I mentioned Nevada, Las Vegas with the outdoor thing. So major events like that. I don't know, you're not going to not live your life, but all I would just say is when you just hear something that sounds like firecrackers, probably not firecrackers. Most people always say that. Sound like firecrackers, because you've never been on a gun range. Didn't sound like firecrackers. It sounded like incoming rounds followed by the report. That's what it sounds like if you've ever heard that. But to people who haven't, it sounds like firecrackers. Well, firecrackers aren't supposed to be going off when you're in the museum, in Cairo, all right? So, or wherever. The other thing you have to watch about in this, what I call quasi-blend between recreational retail areas that are open to all and the transit things, so the open area things where vehicles come through. It's those, we have them here, the pedestrian 16th Street area. Lots of other areas have that, especially in European towns. All the little cafes, street side cafes, they're great. Watch the world go by, enjoy a latte, but unfortunately there are adversaries who look to exploit that. It's very low tech. Get a 3,000 to 5,000, 12,000, up to 10,000, whatever vehicle, and go plow through a lot of innocent people. okay, to create maximum effect in a simplistic way. And we've had multiple attacks throughout. And in fact, if you look at the list, you don't see, this is not, again, Baghdad, Kabul. No. Berlin, Ohio State, Nice, London, Stockholm, New York City, London, Paris, Barcelona, Edmonton, New York City. All right? And these are all since just 16, and they keep climbing. I haven't even updated this slide in a while. All right? So just know when you're in those areas. All I would say is whether the mall or in those kind of, have an out. Always be escape-minded. And whether it's exits in a theater, whatever you're out, I want to tell you, that's a good one. Be escape-minded. I want you to have a way to not just go where the herd goes. So if I was in a mall and I started hearing something, especially if I'm on a single floor mall, get off axis, get out of the main spine, go into a store, and if you know you're on the first level, even if you're not, I would punch into a store, heck with rules now, I'm usurping, right through either their stock room or through the back door, how they load in. You will be much better off, possibly not even being hit by whoever is active shooter or whatever else, who might be looking at those exits for the target-rich environment. You just won't be trampled to death by all the other people who are panicked out of their mind and all rushing for the same exits, okay? Another little just tidbit that can work for you. True also in streets, because you get in these segmented streets, if you got a major thoroughfare and you start hearing an explosion or rounds, get to the ground first as fast as you can. It's very hard though to pick up where it's coming from because it's going to be bouncing off walls and everything, and I'm talking about just the sound. So it's very hard to triangulate and say it's definitely coming from here. And if they're shooting at you, you'll hear it all around you before you hear it there. So it's very disorienting for people who are not, even people in the military, just trying to figure out where stuff's coming from. All right? Don't hug the walls either, just another one on the street. So I'm just saying on that street, get off, then as soon as you can, get off the street and off a side, punch into a, something to get off the street, and especially if it's explosion, something worse, get back, don't be behind a single wall, get back a room. That's more high threat stuff. And also on the walls, you tend to want to hug it. Don't do that, because what those bullets tend to do is they don't just bounce like a billiard ball perfectly. When they hit, they tend to just do a very shallow pass down what they hit. So you would think I feel vulnerable out here in the middle, so I want to be up against the wall here. Yeah, but what you're doing now is any place where they hit the wall in several other areas almost get funneled right where you are. So you want to be about an arm's distance away at least, okay? And I'm just saying while you're running or whatever, just another trick that comes from, unfortunately, lots of years in combat in urban areas for people who've learned that. All right. And the pickpockets, this is probably what you're most going to have. This is Rome and Barcelona and Moscow and Paris and everything else. It's the pickpocket. Excuse me, sir, can you show me where? He doesn't know where it is, but he's trying to be helpful or whatever. I'm not from here. Move on. And watch your back, because usually they work in pairs, obviously. This one's doing the misdirect. Here comes the guy to do the pick. They can work alone. A lot of times they'll use kids. This guy's really enjoying his creamy whip or whatever that is, gelato, I don't know. And he's got cake. Oh, no, it's McDonald's. Yep. Abroad and eating McDonald's. Awesome. That is an American for sure. And guys, I know we have, we've got a lot of handsome gentlemen in here, myself excluded, is that you're not as interesting, as you think you are. So if they're paying lots of attention to you, especially I'm saying women folk, there's a reason, is that you're being targeted for either elicitation or something else, or being set up. And it happens a lot to young troops where they think, man, I'm awesome. They think I look like Brad Pitt. Yeah, not so much. You're being set up. And so here they are, the girls are sitting here just, oh yes, are you in movies or whatever? And meanwhile, she's right in on him right there while they get right in his face, He's talking to him and she's going into his pockets. All right, so just pickpocketing, they make some bags, about the kind you can wear up against your body, like underneath your clothing and stuff. They wear packs and handbags and things that have both cable, real thin cable through here so it can't be cut. It has even like a cable mesh through the body inside, so you can't just slice it, which they'll do sometimes with like a razor blade and pull or have it spill out. These are made by PackSafe. So it's a good brand. We use them to pack a lot of kits in. You don't something that, when it comes to packing your kit or whatever you want with you, if you are going someplace more austere and going to be more away, then you might have your kit swell up. but you could take small stuff, just stuff that could fit in your pocket. And if, at the end, if you want to, any ideas or some of that kind of stuff, I can show you that. So I don't want to keep everybody depending on what your needs are. But again, got his mark working in 2. Same guy here in his face while the other one working his bag. All right, so that's TRAP. That's what's all our things. So I use that acronym just saying don't get caught in any of these traps. So your transits, this is in order of most sort of dangerous areas to least. So remember when we said ports of entry was your most, it's actually statistically the least of all of these. So just want to put that in perspective, okay? All right. And if on the other side of individual, all we've been talking about is individual events. The other side is just what do you need? Well, you need help. So knowing where, because whether that's just a 911 or a country equivalent where you are, that's great. They come to you, and we're used to that. I want to be serviced. you come to me, provide me the service. In some of these countries, you're going to have to get there. We've had missionaries, there's a house being broken into, and they call the police, and they said, yes, we'll be right there. Please send the car. The police in an African nation who are wanting to help, they have no vehicle because it's shared and somebody else is out on patrol and they don't have one at the station, so they can't get to them. I mean, that's just a reality for them, So knowing what their limitations are, I can give you tell you where to go get a satellite over-the-horizon beacon that'll bang out 5 watts to the Cosmos-SAR satellite system that's configured around the world. It's been out there since the Cold War. We actually did this with the Soviets too. The Soviet Union, America, France, and Canada put this system up. And it was basically built to cover all the aircraft that fly, commercial aircraft, and all the ships at sea, maritime ships. So they had a system from pole to pole that would cover them with their big systems where aircraft goes down. But that same system can go off this one too. Now it's a pretty small price to pay as far as cube and weight. Price is about, well, now they're under $300. But this thing goes anywhere. I mean, it will be seen anywhere, and it populates into the Air Force Rescue Coordination Center in Cocoa Beach, Florida, at Patrick Air Force Base, and then it will go, they're going to contact your home. So you can have that, but what's responding where you are? If I'm in sub-Saharan Africa, or I'm in, Mongolia or whatever, what's coming? I mean, the people are hearing, it's all getting out there. We know at least, well, we don't know if it's you, but we know the POB that you had went off. So understand that just having these things, or if it's an app, I've got a membership with ISOS, International SOS, or Rescue Global, and I've got an app, a little red button, and I push it. And helicopters are just going to come over the nearest ridge line and scoop me up. It's like Calgon taking me away. It just doesn't work like that. There is a tyranny of time and distance to a lot of this stuff. And so what I would just tell you is you need to be prepared to be a little more self-sufficient for a longer period of time than you might think, okay, in a lot of these situations. So, but this is kind of the standard thing. Your hospitals, your embassy, or consulate, but what is this for? This is if, obviously, if you get hurt. This is if you lost your passport. This is if, of course, you got robbed or something, you want to respond or whatever, or friendly fire. And again, this is that part I would say if you have private resources from your security detail, if you have that, all the way to something more, you bought an account with International SOS. And they do have good services as far as, let's say, medical evacuation, things like that. Should you have an illness or injury, and get you out there to a good trauma facility. But when it comes to, there was a coup that just erupted at midnight, and it's engulfing my entire blocks around my hotel, and I feel threatened, and we're on the roof right now, and I'm pushing on this POB to go off, and I'm calling ISOS, and they're gonna do what? Because the bad guys already took the international airport, or they've cratered it, or they put a lot of trucks out there on it to keep other aircraft from coming in, other than military jumping onto it. Or they tell you, because like in Yemen, there was no lead up to the warning. There was no warnings in Yemen to Americans, not official. Because why? Politically, we had said Yemen is a partner, things are going well, until it's not going well. And so all I would tell you is a lot of these things require the embassy to order an evacuation. If the embassy doesn't do that, read the fine print. They won't come and get you. You paid the money. You're not having a medical event. You're just worried about what's going on. And once they do, what happens is, it's kind of I don't want to disparage the service, but it's kind of a good way to protect themselves from getting a lot of, because people could get, oh my God, a firecracker actually went off outside and I got scared, and so I want them to come and get me and take me out of this country. Well, if they're doing that all the time, they're going to run out of funds, right? So that's the way they do it. They want the embassy to commit, then if they do, we'll come. But then if the embassy is telling them to get out, more than likely, they're not allowing commercial air in anymore and all that. You see the sort of catch-22 with those? Once again, be more self-sufficient than you might think. And what do you think I will provide, I don't want you to read all this stuff. All I would just tell you is I'll provide this through Carl or whatever, so because some of the stuff you can read, and it's pretty common sense, things like the ATMs and at night, pretty obvious. A lot of express kidnappings happen there. Some of this stuff you can read on your own, so I'll let you do that. I want to press forward on a couple other things. This is one, as just a quick thing, you're not going to have some really big, like a military style emergency plan, but as another little acronym, GOT ME. This is nothing more than what your grandmother or your mother told you to do. Hey, tell somebody where you're going and when you're going to be back. It's just that mundane, but that mundane kind of things pays it gold. I might have a PLB, I might have all this gear. What if something happened? I got knocked on the head, whether something happened, from falling debris or an actual explosion and an attack. I wasn't able to cook it off. I woke up and I'm like in handcuffs or I'm whatever, I'm actually held by somebody or I'm hurt, whatever, and I didn't get a chance to get that off. When's somebody gonna come looking for me? In other words, what's the red star cluster flare that goes up and says, hey, well, it's somebody knowing where I am and where I'm gonna be back. So we use GOT ME as an acronym. And what is it? Simple. You could do it in just a few seconds. Hey, hey Carl, I'm going to the ATM. I'm going with Jim here. I'm going to be about 10 minutes because we're going to grab something on the way back. So I should be back on the hour or whatever. So I've got the first three already done, in a sentence. I'm going where, others going with, time, because when I say others going with, this individual people missing thing is an individual thing. If a carload of 4 people goes missing, that's not one event, that's 4 events. Because you got to track those people. You don't know, are they all together? Or did something happened and they all just blew out into the woods? So just something, if you have a business where you have people traveling abroad, I throw some of those things out to you of how you need to kind of think about some of these things, putting in your own, for your own peace of mind or what you would do for yourself and hopefully do for your people that might be at risk. The last 2 are more for like police, markers. What do I look at? Well, if you're friends, they can describe you. Know what I can do with a phone? Okay, and if I didn't, hey, well, I don't even remember what you're wearing right now. Click, there you go. That's him. So my markers, my bolo, be on the lookout for. Carl there, who's wearing a nice sweater vest and with a blue tie and white shirt, whatever about this. You've got all that and any triggers. And last but not least, the emergency POCs to alert. You might already know that. So, hey, I've got my PLB there. Call the 1-800-HELP-ME number or my business or whatever if it has a single point to the security, if you have got something like that. In other words, who to contact. Who does the person who's going to be my angel, who are they going to contact? Because they don't know. They're not a recovery force. Do you want me to call the police? You want me to call your mom? What do you want me to do? That kind of thing. That's it. Got me. Make sense? Real quick and easy. All right. Same as the other one. You can read that stuff. All right, that's all I did. What I did real quick was I wanted to do the individual stuff. I touched on a couple of things. The other, this is much shorter, other than to say, if anybody wants to hang, all of this is who would you call? This is the part on the personnel recovery or duty of care side to say, well, who's out there? All right, who do you think? So if you want, I can either, for those that want to stay, I will go through this a lot quicker, but just wanted to hit the who would you call kind of thing, all right? Because I will tell you, it's not who you think. How many say the embassy? I'm going to call the embassy. That's what we most think. That's what it's there for, right? It's an American institution, and it's there to protect me, right? Yeah, not so much. It's there to be that engagement of American foreign policy. That's what it's there for, and the behest of the president, the executive branch, and all of that through the State Department. They are not there, and they're here to serve Americans. And yes, they can certainly say things that certainly American lives are most precious, blah blah blah. I'm just telling you, when something really goes down in those countries, like Yemen, that embassy executes its EAP, its Emergency Action Plan. That's for the embassy and its family members to collapse down in and go in an orderly fashion, quickly and as safely as possible, to the waiting aircraft, the C-17, that's going to blast them off. And they're going to just wave to all the Americans still sitting back there going, what are you doing? When the Bataclan Theater went down, when that went down, they hit a football stadium, they hit several other cafes, and they hit the Bataclan Theater was the last place where they really hold up. It sounded, if you were in that neighborhood, like it was Baghdad, just the explosions and gunfire. And you just thought, holy crap, I don't know what's going on, but it sounds like a war. And I'm not going to the hotel, or I feel so. Guess what? People looked up, where's the embassy? Direct to on their phones and went running there. Okay? Only to be turned around by the French police right there. Because what's the French police's job? Protect the American embassy. Just like we protect foreign embassies here. Well, I'm an American, here's my passport. No, get back, because they're worried, hey, maybe the Americans they got to protect the embassy. You're second, unfortunately, you don't rise to the occasion. So, happened in Yemen as well, where people got left. Here's the things that we say our National Command Authority does, from private, which is International SOS, to Ross Perot, putting together his own recovery. If you remember that, did that in Iran, pulled his EDS employees out of there. Great story. If you got the money, you can put together your own Delta force. Diplomatic, it's obviously been done at different times, and the military. And this military being warfare, just people coming in, to highly surgical counter-terrorist forces that we have that go in and do the bad things, or do the, good things to bad people. So whether it's Osama bin Laden or al-Baghdadi or whatever else. And they also come in and get people. And if you don't think as a private citizen that you would see such people, that you don't rise to the occasion, there's a Dr. Dilip Joseph down there in Colorado Springs who was a member of an NGO operating in Afghanistan, was captured. Okay? And he was held and he was rescued by SEAL Team 6. Okay? He did an okay job. They, here's what, I don't want you to read this, it's an eye chart to say this. I want to, real quick, this is from their website. From their website. Do we always evacuate U.S. citizens on the crisis overseas? No. What departure assistance? We don't have the resources. Will the government come and pick me up if I need assistance getting to the airport? Just from let's say your hotel and that part. No. You seeing where this is going? Okay. And here's so these are the kind of events that these aren't what we've just been talking for most of the day here, of just saying all these individual events, things with you and the individual. They were talking major things that destabilize an area. And they can be Mother Nature, they're in green, okay? They could be accidents that are man-made, but nothing that's targeted, just a big, port explosions, Fukushima, which was following an earthquake, but then, and destabilize, could be a train derailing with chlorine gas, any number of things. And then the last one, man-made, targeted events, wars, coups, all this stuff, protests and riots, really big now in South America right now. If you've been watching the news, what's going on in Chile, Peru, Ecuador, Hong Kong, okay? If you're in those areas, it would be great up until the night that it's not. And then suddenly it's all coming. And not saying they're targeting you, but you're in that mayhem. And for those of you who just remember real quick, on Colorado Springs, also as in New Orleans, after the hurricane, but also in Colorado Springs after our fire, basically Waldo Canyon, when people got blasted out of their homes in just minutes, that fire just came racing down. It was like Dresden. So you just run out with what you have. Usually grab your valuables or whatever, and that's about it, heirlooms. And where did they go? They went to the high schools where they had Red Cross and others had set up some place to put them. They spent the night there, drove the cars and left, in the cars just what they could run out the door with. What do you think happened that night? What do you think that the opportunists did here in America within just a few hours of the fire going, that's still pressing down on other parts of Colorado Springs? What do you think they did? They absolutely went into those cars, into these high school parking lots that were totally unprotected, because the bad guys have just enough forethought. It's too bad they don't use all that gray matter to do some good things, because that's ingenious in a way to say, here's all the expensive stuff. They hit these cars that normally wouldn't have anything in them, and they had a payday. And people come out they already lost their home, and now the car's ransacked too. Do you think that happens abroad? Absolutely. So when Nepal earthquakes went down, the human traffickers came in right behind it. So I'm just saying, when you're in these things, they go from bad to worse. Okay, they sort of stair step. So this is not important other than saying, here's the pieces. This is what the government has to do to find you. We need to know that it's about it, so that report piece. We need to know that you're missing from somebody. We need to find you, so we have to locate you. We'll support you if we can. So if you had comms with you, we'll be talking with you saying, okay, do this, do that. Hey, go this way, avoid that. Oh, you say you're hurt. Okay, give you telemedicine, whatever. Eventually get to you. Won't always be a helicopter. And then reintegrate, give you some of that's more the psychological kind of stuff and making sure your needs are met. These two, though, really important. If you can do these two, you really speed it up. So things like the PLB or other things and methods in which you can report, help report, or again, because you gave a got me thing to somebody else, that they can help report and locate you or at least narrow it down, okay? We've got terrific eyes and ears around the world. But if you force them to, it's like looking at a stadium and looking across the other side and saying, hey, you see the guy in the red shirt? I see everywhere. Okay, so that add it there, coming up about 3 levels, lower left side, you see, here's a guy in a red shirt? And it's like, I can narrow it. Oh, okay, you can't. That's what we're trying to do. Otherwise, it takes too long. It's almost untenable. See if you can help. And when this authentication, what is that? Know when it's you. When you travel, do you take a copy of your passport? A copy, separate copy, right? Kind of common knowledge thing. Good. So just like that authenticates you, how would you do that over a phone or over a radio? Because like I said, if this thing goes off, it's assigned to me. These are serial numbered. So it's definitely one that I bought and it's assigned to me in the system. Doesn't mean I turned it on though. Somebody could have knocked me on the head, taken it and turned it on. So there's a great thing about these, but at some point, they need to still verify that it's me or whatever. Yes, sir?
AAA also suggests having a picture of your driver's license and your passport on your phone.
You can.
Your phone does have a little bit of authentication too.
Absolutely. You can absolutely do that. The only bad things with phones, batteries and power. And I wouldn't want that. I would want to secure that somewhere within the phone, not just in my pictures. Should somebody go, oh, it's a facial recognition, I hold it up to you, it opens it up for me, and I go through all your stuff if I'm robbing you and seeing what else is in here, and now I have other info that you might not have given to me because you gave me a wallet that was really a throwdown wallet. It didn't have all that kind of stuff, right? So just know that there's a bad side to that too. Yes, sir, that's good. So another thing, what you must do is regardless whether you help or don't, you gotta survive. So when it comes back, it all comes full circle to the survival stuff that we teach. So when we do the stuff that we do, nothing that we can do in an hour or whatever that we have, in something like this, is that we teach you those skills just to get through that. And some of it is just straight up Boy Scout stuff. If you have the option that other people would not dream of, that if I'm in a hotel, if that building's a hotel, and there's woods over there, that something's going on and they just hunker down in their room in sort of a safe room, panic room mentality, that's usually a bad thing. Because they're kind of holding on to the sinking ship at that point. Much better, and I've seen this happen also when we train people in village areas, Peace Corps types, NGOs, who, when they heard some bad stuff was coming, or they heard hey, there's some guys with guns coming down, they just, boom, punch into the jungle. You just become a needle in a haystack at that point. They're going to take the time to go find you. They're looking for the easy take, to come in there they are, grab up the Americans for money or for whatever, They either want your property, your body, or your life, Well, that's pretty much the big three, And for some reason, the body might be to get more property, like to leverage you, kidnap and ransom, but the body could be a sexual attack, property's obvious, and the last one is they just want to kill you for maximum impact. You're not important other than to be a statistic because we're the new narco-terrorist guys and we're really bad, like the poor family down there in Mexico. What the heck were they doing? I mean, they just slaughtered his kids and women. For what? They didn't take in their stuff. They didn't, it was just sheer wanting cred. Anyway, so all I would say here with this is the other thing we need, like a force or any recovery force needs, we need to know where you are. They need one other thing, and that's this. See, you're down here. You're that evader. You're that person in crisis. Okay, but and a PIC is also like an aviation's pilot in command. You are in command. You get that, right? You have that right of self-defense. and right to life. So guess what? You're the reason this is going on, but understand you are very empowered. Because if you have to, these recovery assets, I mean, it may be Delta, SEAL Team 6, great. And they can get to you if we know where you are. But here's the last thing. We have all the, if we know where you are, I don't care what adversary has it, nobody's going to yet ever stopped us. In fact, sometimes when they hear we're coming, they've released the people because they don't want to deal with that. But it relies on this. And that's happened many times. Have the capability, know where, nothing's stopping us, accept the authority. Can we go? No? Okay. And we wait. And the authorities come or they don't come for any number of reasons. And they've made movies about that and things like that, such as, and I'm not doing this as any kind of political, sniping or anything. It's happened. These kind of things have happened under all watches. Okay, I've been doing this 35 years in and out of uniform, so I'm just saying, for lots of different reasons of why we do or don't go on stuff. What you should have, the point of this, you should try these because you never give up that. Okay? You don't have to do it all on your own, but you should try to strive to that. Okay? It's just a good way to look at this because you are bearing all of the risk compared to the rest. All right? Like this gentleman here, American, he got himself out of Yemen when America did not send one airplane other than getting the embassy out. Not one aircraft, not one boat, not one nothing. And he just took the initiative to go down about 6 hours south. He evaded out of a city that was under complete fire, got on the boat, and then had the wherewithal to take a selfie as he crosses the Red Sea from Yemen over to Djibouti, where he got off on the shore, immediately accosted by police, and with his U.S. passport and said, "I'm an American, and it's hell over there, and I just want to get out." And after a couple hours, and said, "Yep, he is who he says he is," and he was fine. This guy just got got himself out of country, waterborne evacuation. Great initiative, and I certainly can't fault it in a situation like that. Many others are still waiting, okay? All right. We won't go over the survival. And the last day, this is stuff that we talk about, other than to say that you already do certain things as part of your life and your work. So for your profession, you have skill sets. And to do that, you have to be able to communicate, and you travel to these places. We're talking about travel. That's part of your normal life. Okay, that's stuff that you do, all right? What's the other stuff that's implied? We do it right now. But we just got fed, and we're in a nice 70 degrees and nice humidity. In other words, infrastructure helps us with the rest, which is we have to protect and sustain our metabolic processes. We have to maintain 98.6. We got water, got food. Man, metabolism's going great now. So this stuff is met. And it's generally met by our urban infrastructure or by an organization. So what's the difference? What really upsets the apple cart? What changes? It's not that different. What changes, if we have an isolating event, is that now we're communicating by some means. I'm in trouble, get other forces or some people helping me, and I'm going to travel basically and navigate, which implies navigation, to some place where if this is bad, I want to be where not bad is. So I'm going to sanctuary, I'm going to something. And I won't go into any more detail, but there are a lot of options, there really are. So don't think the embassy. Not saying the embassy can't be a part of it, because sometimes they do help. Don't just have that be your one is none. Have what we call a PACE plan, primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency. So I want to have not just 3 strikes and you're out, because that emergency one is always, it's up to me. I'm just going to wing it now, or whatever you came up with. There's always that. But you should have 3 other options. But this right now, I got to do this. So whether that's with my kit and my skill sets, that I've got the ability to protect my own life limb, that I'm basically going to go camping. We'll call it a Boy Scout trip. Because being in those woods, in some cases, would be far greater than being in some city that's erupting, coming off at the seams. I'm talking in this bigger thing. So and there are case studies where this has happened. There was a whole group in a very 5-star safari group, high net worth people that were paying for this 5-star treatment. And here comes John. Why am I missing that one? I am brain farting on the Horn of Africa today. Anyway, that came in there. So actually, they weren't from them. It was actually over from some other person, more Nigerian-based, like Joseph Kony's guys who've been causing a lot of trouble for years. Anyway, they hit this resort and just took all these people and marched them into the jungle. And it was, they did a whole, I think it's called Gorillas with a G-U-E, not Gorillas in the Mist, but Gorillas in Our Midst. And it had to do with this group, and they literally hacked people as they couldn't keep up because some were elderly or whatever, miles and miles taking them back into their country. And if they couldn't keep up, turn around, chop, chop, done, keep moving. Wipe the blood off as they go. They got to the end, and they were about to just say, and that's it. I mean, you got us here. That was our safe passage. We have our hostages. Now you're no good. And anyway, the guy got himself out. Won't go. You can read about the story, but here's the deal. There was a young couple who was in one of those little hooches that when all the shooting started, they didn't just sit there frozen in fear. They got up and punched straight into the deep, dark jungle in what they were wearing, just jumping out of the, which is kind of not normal. But they were infinitely more safe. You know how they were long there, or how long they were there? Yeah, it's about 30 minutes to an hour because it happened before first light, and these guys wanted to collect everybody up and get off the X because they know the police is coming. So that's what they did, and this couple hours walked right back out into the room, and they never saw any of that terror. So you see what I'm saying? Having an option of being able to just displace a little bit sometimes in these kind of places where you would never think. I mean, I'm sure it was all caviar and everything and champagne, and it was, until the bad stuff happens. You don't have to obsess about this. You just have to think about it and say, well, what would I do if? And then have just a couple options. And sometimes it's nothing more than if you have camped or backpacked or whatever, a couple of things. I'm not going to be real comfortable with some mosquitoes or whatever, but you're not going to, I would have your chances out there than the other ones. All right? Makes sense? That's pretty much all that is about, because all you have to worry about is that. As long as you can cover the temperatures and injury or illness and the thirst hunger side, you're pretty good for quite some time. All right? That's it, guys. Is that when we teach our classes that we do, we teach how you're doing this so you can assess all this to make the best decisions, because in the end, we're executing this stuff on our own in this realm. That's all that is. Now, I'm just talking, this is big picture things, but we can't do it anymore. And I will leave it at that, and I hope if you have any other questions or anything like that, I can certainly address anything else at the end. I've kept you longer, but we did have a couple little delays in starting, and I hope it's been helpful for you. And if you want to learn more, I will push information on some of this that I've talked about. So if you took copious notes, great. But I'll have some more for you, and Carl will also have our contact information. Yes, sir.
As far as that information you're going to provide.
Yes. On that, he was asking, because I'm stopping here, so we're going long. But there was he asked about where do you go for information like getting the situational awareness just on. Now, you certainly can go to to STEP, which is the Smart Traveler Enrollment Program through the U.S. State Department. If you go to the statedepartment.gov and you look at travel, you'll see both. They'll have links to the CDC on the health side and vaccinations. They'll have the stuff about the country you want to go to. Now, that being said, it's pretty generic. And sometimes I'll just tell you, there's a tendency for them not to tell you about things going on, because guess what? When they say, ooh, watch out for that country, what's it do to their tourism? Tanks it. What happens to those people of that country, their leadership, when that happens? Yeah, their ambassador gets real mad. What are you doing? So I'll just tell you it happens. So here's another thing. Go look at some other countries. As a real easy trick, go to the UK. It's the Foreign Commonwealth Office, which is basically their State Department travel office. They do the same thing, but you get it from a British perspective. Very good in India and places where the Brits have been for centuries. French, get that through Canada. Canada's State Department and their travel warnings. They have very much a French influence, which is good for places that France has been, North Africa and places like that. And last but not least, Australia. Excellent if you're going to go down in the Southeast Asia area, so Indonesia, Bali, cool places, but that's their Mexico. It's right next door. It's where they travel a lot. So I would rather hear it from them, because they're right there, than America. So those are some real quick. The only other things I would tell you is just blogs. If you're going to a country, look at the travel blogs, both expats and other things, especially like Lonely Planet, not Foders, everything's 5-star. Go to the Lonely Planet, sort of poor backpacking high schoolers and college kids. They know where like when you do your plan, they might know how to get off the grid, so to speak, because you don't want to go from a 5-star hotel that's on fire to another 5-star hotel that's about to be targeted. I mean, say in a real bad situation. You want to go find out where's the little hovels you can go to, and where's some, that kind of thing. So there's some real quick ones, but I'll have some of those sources for you in the documentation, okay? Thanks for that. Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
There is something to help secure like hotel doors.
Yes, I'll show you that real quick. So anyone want to see the other stuff, I'll show you that. Most of this is more on that survival side or long term, but this what you're talking about is right here. It's called a door jammer. It's not very big. So it comes in I don't know why, a velvet pouch. But, all right, this is it. Not much bigger than a cell phone. That's it. And all it is, you can see it would wedge up under the door. And then this piece here, I'm just going to sit here and screw that down onto the floor. It has a little foot here if there's a bigger space between the door. It has a little foot also for carpet to dig in a little better. Otherwise, if it's more of a ceramic porcelain type floor, you can just use that rubber thing. But you're going to crank this down and until it ain't moving. Now, we say, well, now I'm stuck in here. What if I want to get out? You don't have to sit here and undo this. It is on it's just a very little hinge. Once you do this, it's going to wedge it up in there hard. So now this door, it's amazing how much this little thing holds, a solid core door. It really binds it up good. Now, is this permanent? No. Any place like that, if people are kicking in your doors and if they have AKs, yeah, they're coming through. You may get a little bit longer with this, but somebody can't just punch in your door, especially if the other locks are bad. But if I need to get out, I just reach down here, pop that up, it comes right out. Literally a second. If we had a regular door here, I could show you, but it's very quick. You can just see. Door jammer, I think doorjammer.com. We carry them as well, but that's a nice tool to back up your security on your hotel room. All right? Thank you so much. Thank you, Carl, for that. So. My pleasure.